All right. All right. So let's get started.
Okay, go for
If you can tell us who you are.
it. That's kind of a. I'm John Vail. I live in Easton, New Hampshire. I love living in Easton. I look up on the Kinsman Ridge Trail, which is part of the Appalachian Trail, and it is reputed to be the worst section of trail on the entire Appalachian Trail. What else can I say? I'm old. I don't know.
Well, you're
I'm a retired carpenter, social worker type. I go to church. I don't know what else can I say.
well, we connected because I saw it was the About Face meeting for the action last June in DC. About Face Veterans Against the War, and it turns out I didn't know you were New Hampshire Veterans for Peace. I had an email list, but I don't know most of the people on the email list.
Yeah.
And well, when did you serve?
68 to 70, September to September. Um, During the Vietnam War, I spent my whole 2 years at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. I had advanced infantry training orders from basic, but I applied to be a conscientious objector, and that
Mhm.
held my orders until they figured it out. And I just wound up staying at Fort Bragg. But,
Were you drafted?
yeah, I had be I had signed up in college for an officer training program in the Marine Corps. I spent one summer in Quantico, off, officer training, and then I resigned because of the war. And my resignation letter basically said, "I don't think you want to commission me to lead Marines. I think this war is stupid," or something like that. And they didn't want
How
me.
how old were you?
Um, 20, 22.
20,
20, no, let's see,
68. So we
21.
were already in the war for a little bit. You knew a little bit about it, or were you following the what was going on overseas?
Oh, yeah, I followed it. I'd be in conversation with people who were coming back, who had been over and came back to finish their tours. But it
Where were
was,
you living? Oh, sorry.
go ahead.
No, where were you living? You were having these conversations, people coming home, coming back.
You know, um, I lived on post for probably half my time there, and then I lived off post. We used to have meetings on post trying to get GIs to sit down and talk about the war. Um, it was an interesting time. Um, I'd go to something that is important to me in this discussion is that one of the biggest mistakes of my generation was to create the conditions that ended the draft, the military draft. If we had a military draft, we would not be having all of these wars. And a big piece, enough of that is because mothers all over this country would be, you are not sending my kid to die in wherever.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was interesting to be in a draft army, like I don't know what percentage. It was a good percentage. It would be interesting to know that what percentage of Vietnam era soldiers were draftees,
Hmm.
but many of us were. And it's a different kind of soldier than an enlisted man. People were willing to press back, like the notion of illegal orders that is now being talked about.
Hmm.
There was people would disobey. It's just, well, I'm not doing that. I'm not supposed to do that. Of course, there were other things that happened that were horrible, where people obeyed orders or disobeyed orders. But yeah, it was a different deal, and it was sort of, I mean, like an example. When I first went in the service, my my service number, my ID number, had a prefix. The prefix was U.S., and the U.S. was what all draftees were designated as. And then there was RA, regular Army, NG, National Guard, ER, Enlisted Reserve. So you had a prefix and then a
Okay.
bunch of numbers. And if a draftee was asked what their number was, they'd just give the numbers. And then somebody would say, well, what's your prefix? And a draftee would respond something like, are you kidding me? You think I signed up for this? Or something like that. They just were kind of, this is bullshit. Um, I know that, like, another example of that is in Vietnam during that period, people didn't go over as a unit. They went over for 1 year. And it was, if you went on the 4th, you came home on the 3rd of the same month. And so people would get short, call themselves, I'm so short, because you only have a month left, or then days and hours or something. And people were very aware of how much time they had left. And it was a norm in many places in Vietnam for soldiers who had like a month left to start saying, I don't go to the field anymore. I'm too short. Oh, you want me to go out on patrol? No, I'm too short. And they were able to do that. It was interesting. It's harder to run a draft army that, like, it worked in World War II because we were fighting something that was significantly more evil than we are.
Yeah.
But in Vietnam, and people knew it. I mean, soldiers protected themselves and their buddies, but they knew things were not right. I mean, not everybody. Some people were gung ho, but there were many soldiers who were deeply troubled by what they were doing. Anyway,
What were the rationales at the time? What were the rationales for why we were there? I mean, you had of all the different points and the theories for why we were fighting in Vietnam.
I
What
think
were people justifying it?
by I mean, there were a bunch of people who were not justifying it, like anti-war soldiers, which I was. I mean, the rationale. There was the domino theory. Stop the Soviets from marching down through Southeast Asia and blah blah blah, and eventually they'll be in Australia, which was a totally overblown thing. It's the same rationale as going into Venezuela. It's some nonsense about the right thing to do, and then everybody notices, oh, there's also this big pile of money that's to be had by the invasion. And I think that's the case. It's to control markets and, I don't know, all that kind of thing. I don't know. There was a thing that many people circulated, a notion. Ho Chi Minh, who was the Uncle Ho, the George Washington of the North Vietnamese. He was really
Hmm. Hmm.
this key character, and he's a wonderful man. I think he studied in Paris, but he had very deep sympathies and connections to the U.S. Constitution. You know, he
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's who he was. And then the leaders in South Vietnam were, uh, oligarchs. That's what they are, oligarchs, people with all the money. Um, and they didn't have much support. And because they didn't have that much support, they militarized the country. It was, um, I mean, there are all these quotes. I don't know if you know and there was a quote from Eisenhower. I think it was from Eisenhower, something to the effect of, we can't have elections in Vietnam, i.e. North and South, all of Vietnam, North and South. We can't have elections. This was in 1954, I think it was. No, my history's weak. But Eisenhower said, we can't have elections because Ho Chi Minh will win. And it's like, it it's crazy. It's crazy. There's another piece. I tend to grind an axe sometimes, or a couple of them. And another piece from my perspective that's important to note is that the notion that there's a difference between people who serve in the military stateside and those who go to war, and it's huge. My service for 2 years was that I sort of I had to wear the same clothes every day, which I didn't mind at all. And then, but I had a lousy job. That's all. It was just a crummy job. I had to do a lot of stupid things. I didn't like it. I didn't like a lot of the nonsense. It was just a crappy job. But to go to war is a totally different thing. And looking back on the veterans, like I had, sometimes I wonder if I would have liked to have gone to Vietnam. It was a generational experience in a way for my age group.
Yeah.
But if I had gone, I would wish that I hadn't gone.
Right.
Yeah, because the guys who went, many of them, and I go to the VA hospital for care. Many of them are quite broken.
Yeah.
And they look it. Many of them look just whipped. But,
Especially, well, you tell me the rationale now for looking back at Vietnam, why we were there, why all these soldiers' lives were lost, why the millions of Cambodians, Laotians, and Vietnamese were slaughtered, carbon bombings, etc. The rationale, I imagine over time, I don't know how big of an impact McNamara's um, when he came out and said he regretted what he had done to participate in
yeah.
the war. I don't know how people look back at it. Like we recognize that these men and women, or men, mostly men, served in time of war, but it doesn't seem the justifications there. Like we had to be in Vietnam. I don't feel I don't think there's any focus. I never hear any conversations about it. I don't know if you come across that.
I, I don't know. I haven't been in recent ones. I think another piece for me is, and this is because of who I am. I'm a Christian socialist Democrat. Those are the big pieces of my outlook. But the struggle between communism and capitalism that's what it was about. And it was phrased that way. The U.S. had a foreign policy of containment. The Russians want to move south through Southeast Asia. We'll stop them there. Oh, they want to go to Korea. We'll stop them there. We'll stop them wherever they push out of the Soviet Union, contain them. And some of that is, related to McCarthyism. I mean, we still have this, so many people look at somebody and say, like Bernie Sanders, who is a socialist. He's an out and out socialist, right? And they look at him as being, a communist, some horrible creature. And this is a holdover from what's his name, McCarthy? Joe McCarthy. The McCarthy hearings, this anti-communism, hunt down all, what went on in Hollywood and all that. And we're still in that struggle. I look at, I think we're particularly in that struggle now. And some of, right now, we're not in a struggle between left and right anymore. I sit on the left. I'm quite left in my values, my perspective, ideas about politics, etc. But it's not that important anymore. We're in a struggle between up and down, between the have-a-lots and the scraping by. It's crazy. The distribution of wealth in our culture it's absurd.
Mhm.
And we have got to step up, and I don't know. The common ground in all that is dark money in politics. That we're an oligarchy, that we're run by the few, not the many. We're not, in fact, democratic. Anyway, I rant. Excuse me.
No, you're fine. Going before I lose it, the when you brought up the point, I've heard that from several people saying that losing the draft was really detrimental to our foreign policy in
No,
engaging in these wars. Or
okay,
sorry,
well,
yeah, losing the draft.
losing. It's not detrimental to our foreign policy. Well, it depends what you mean detriment. I mean,
We can't go gallivanting across because mothers will be out saying you're not taking my son to war.
That's a good thing about our. That would be a good thing for our foreign policy is to not have the
Yes.
wars. But yeah, it is the thing that yeah, mothers and other people and draftees themselves would protest if the war is just these wars of opportunity and conquest. You know, it was like my father, who was in college at the beginning of the Second World War, he graduated early. His whole class sort of graduated early, and they went off and enlisted or were drafted into the military. And they, you know, whereas when I went, no, everybody was trying to get into school and stay in school because it was a deferment from the military. You know, it was a different deal. You know, and it's related to the fact that we were struggling against Adolf Hitler as opposed to Ho Chi Minh or any number of other people. Um, our foreign policy has been relentlessly anti-socialist for decades. You know, the CIA assassinations, they were an end was put to them, sort of, I guess. But those people who were assassinated were all socialists, and that's why they were assassinated. You know, it's not like they were um, bad people or dictators or whatever. You know, they were decent politicians, except that they were socialist. But
That's the point to its related note of Tom Cotton last 2 years ago. One of his statements. It's little things they just say. It's so on the nose. Where he said that, oh, it doesn't matter their human rights track records of these administrations of other countries. It matters if they're the allies, if they're an
yeah,
ally of the United States, if they'll work with us, if they'll do our bidding, which is like, well, yeah, of course. Look how many dictators we have propped up.
yeah,
Look how many governments we've toppled to set up a puppet to do our bidding and extract resources, gain access to markets, gave a favorable position over another country in the region. It, yeah,
yeah. Another feature of that is if you look at um, that's how I agree. That's how we operate. We're manipulators in foreign countries. If you look at the selection process that creates, who comes forward to do our bidding? Who are the people who come forward and who stand off? Anybody with any integrity stands off. They don't want anything to do with being bought by a foreign government. But the people who want the money, because that's what they're in it for, they come forward and take the money. And so it's fundamentally corrupt. You know, you're getting people who are doing well, Central America is like that. Um, you read little histories. Like I've been to Honduras a number of times, and United Fruit was big in Honduras, and they were ruthless, ruthless, and as a result, Honduras has these large, broad, um, relatively flat valleys that are nutrient rich, et cetera, and they are all banana plantations, all of them, and
mm,
those are the bananas that you and I eat on our cereal in the morning. And if you go to the villages, they're up in the mountains, and people are you know, there's a joke in Honduras that, oh, did you hear about the farmer who fell off his field? You know, that the field was so steep he fell off it. That's it.
no,
But
yeah,
they farm steep land um, and difficult land. And it's because all of the good land is reserved, and it's just corrupt, you know. And that's why these um, movements start among people to oust their governments, and you know, we wind up much too often calling them, oh, they're communists or they're terrorists or they're whatever.
yeah.
That's not to say Maduro, I think, was kind of unseemly as a character, has been, or he is a character that's. not altogether kind or whatever.
For the comparison for Maduro, it's like we released Trump pardons the Hernandez from Honduras, right? He pardons him. He's got 40 years of a sentence for his
Yeah,
dealing with trafficking drugs, and I think he's on the record saying he's trying to kill as many Americans as possible. And regardless if he said that publicly in the court in his testimony or if it's somewhere, but the fact that he's tied to this and he gets pardoned, but he's going to go back to Honduras and do
yeah,
our bidding in Latin America.
yeah.
It's yeah. I'll leave it there.
Well, actually, we must not leave it there somehow. I don't know how.
I mean, as far as like pointing out hypocrisies that keep coming out for this or that,
Yeah,
comparing who's a bad apple, who's a good apple, who needs to be our friend, what are we doing here? It's you get tied up in that's like when Trump took office the first time, how many people were trying to go through and analyze every tweet or every statement for all the lies in it or the for what each things means. And if the whole thing is if it's a lot of bullshit, you're just going to be spinning your wheels and it doesn't get you anywhere. You
yeah,
can analyze, and it's just if people are just babbling, right? As Ambassador Freeman said the other night, people get up in front of this thing and babble. You're not going to go anywhere. You could for your own fun, you're doing it, but not for any real analysis of what's happening
yeah.
to a certain degree. Like there's, but I went back to the draft thing because before Bush's administration was out, there was criticism for not finding WMDs in Iraq. And I think Vice President Dick Cheney at the time, I think it was on 60 Minutes interview, and they were talking about the stop loss orders, ordering troops, soldiers to go back in to fill roles in Iraq.
Yeah.
And the and his line, I'll send it to you in an email. His line in it is like, well, they volunteered for this. So 80, it was like 85 or 11,500 troops were stop loss, had orders to go back in to
Yeah.
fill the roles. And it was like, well, it's a volunteer force. They chose to be there. This is what they signed up for. And it's like, yeah, but it's also, I mean, there's a bit of a poverty draft with this. I mean, you
Oh,
go to
yeah.
it because it's the best opportunity
Yeah.
for you to get in the social mobility ladder,
Yeah.
the way to climb up.
Yeah.
But to just say, well, you volunteered for this, well, you volunteered for what? And now you're doing something. It's not just you're doing it because you want to. Now you've got the UCMJ, Uniform Military Code of Justice. There's laws. You don't want to go to prison. I mean, it's a risk to ignore or to disobey an order if you think it's illegal. You're on your own.
Yeah.
You're going to face the brunt of it for a long time, depending on the severity of the order you ignored.
Yeah.
Um,
And not only that, but that thing of if you do something really horrendous, like um, like the My Lai massacre during the
yeah,
Vietnam War. Well, actually, they singled out one guy who went to jail, and there were way more people who were involved in the chain of command and not investigating, et cetera, et cetera. And then there was the whole um, thing of like there was the use of like the word gook to talk about Vietnamese people
yeah,
or Asian people. Um, it, there was this whole thing of that self-hatred idea, or not the self-hatred, but the hatred idea. I mean, that's being used now again. That's we're living in a world where everybody's trying to get us mad at each other. You know?
yeah.
Yeah.
Switching to VFP, VFP started in '85, Veterans for Peace. So it was some time after you got out.
Yes.
You, when did you come across it? When did you join? How did that start?
I don't. You may. I don't know what the date was. I would have guessed it was earlier than '85, but you might know that it was in fact. I got out. As soon as I heard about it, I joined. But I went to a couple annual meetings Um, but I never was in a local. And then when I was up here in northern New Hampshire, I'm kind of in the boondocks. But after the war, um, I got out, and there was Vietnam Veterans Against the War. I don't know if you knew that.
Yeah,
Have
I
you-
remember that. There's still a website. I don't think it's updated, been updated in a while, but I still every now and then would go back to it and check out the blog.
Oh, interesting. It was John Kerry was a big shot in it,
Yeah.
and and I left Fort Bragg, and I'd been active my whole 2 years pretty much in this organization, GIs United Against the War in Vietnam, and it was having anti-war rallies, putting out a newspaper, or talking to GIs about the war. Um, so I got out, and I was kind of interested in, okay, now what do I do with this? And I looked at VVAW, but John Kerry was he was like a star or something, and there was I can remember that because everybody was out there saying, "Oh man, this guy's running for president," which is like 30 years or whatever ahead of when he actually did.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know.
But
And
he knew
then
that he knew Bush, right? They were both at Yale the same time.
I
He
don't
was
know.
somewhat
They could have
connected.
been. I don't know.
I thought they were part of the same society, fraternity at Yale.
Oh yeah, that could be.
Um,
I don't. Skull and crossbones or something.
I think he was connect. Yeah, maybe he had his political aspirations start. He said it'll take time because he's not a family name, as far as I know. But yeah, I'll start setting my roots in now.
Yeah, yeah. But
Um, so you start. What do you think you did? You join? So you joined when it came about. You heard it. You join up. Um, does Vietnam stick out as the war that you come back to? Like from all the U.S. interventions, is that the one that attracts you the most? That you spend time focusing on what we were doing, or if you even see it in this way?
what do you mean by that? What is it?
So
I
often when I have conversations, I find myself talking about the war in Iraq,
oh I got
2000.
yeah, yeah oh yeah because it was your
People
experience.
people talk about it just me being
Yeah,
as a kid when 9/11 happens, we're
yeah,
Iraq after,
yeah,
if it was Afghanistan, but
yeah.
focusing on what happened because
Well,
of yep.
it was your experience. That's what you did. You were in that war, and it was sort of you understand war in light of that particular war, and me for Vietnam, it just makes sense, that um, to think about what your own experience was. But I had that piece of looking back, and how do you put that? I mean, like PTSD started as a notion during the Vietnam War or after the Vietnam War. The
Mhm.
notion that people's experiences were so horrid that they were traumatized by it. Um, that was new then, that um, it was new enough such that I don't know, like if that in World War II, what do they call it? Either battle fatigue or shell shock.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think there was more of a sense that if you claimed either anything like that, you were you were a pansy, or you're a chicken shit, or there's something cowardly about you. And then in Vietnam, there was sort of a growing awareness that no, these people really were messed up because of their experience. They were just wacky and
Yeah.
troubled, yeah, and couldn't function. Um, there was something about Vietnam that was a little different from your experience, as I understand it, but I don't know your experience. But in Vietnam, most of Iraq is in the desert. If you're seeing an enemy, you're seeing him, hundreds of yards off coming at you. In Vietnam, it was like right there, 5 feet from you, there could be somebody in the jungle who's just looking through whatever, maybe it was more like 10 or 15 feet of jungle
Mhm.
looking at you, somebody who could be an enemy. So there's something that there was. I always had that sense it was much more paranoid or something. It's like right there is something right next to me. Something could jump out and get me. Whereas the Iraq experience is, oh, here they come, get ready, everybody, or something like that. I don't. I never saw combat in either place. But
I imagine the fear, because I have to clarify. I didn't go to Iraq. I just pointed out as far as like growing up with the hoorah about Iraq.
uh
I
huh,
went. I was in Operation Enduring Freedom, but my our focus was, you wouldn't believe it, Iran.
uh huh,
And but I was base. I never left base because I was in the Air Force. I was in the Air National Guard, and our mission was tied to communications and radar and air
yeah,
pictures for air battle managers. So for us, by the time I serve and I deploy in 2012, it's good pay. It's pretty good pay, and there's no taxes on it, and people look forward to it because the casualty rate's zero on base,
yeah,
and so anything that's off on the front lines, I would imagine is closer to what your experience about Vietnam because you're going down streets.
yeah,
You're
yeah,
doing occupation. You're an occupying force.
yeah,
You're controlling and when you and like you're describing like an ambush. Somebody's within rifle range and take shots at you. Like
yeah,
I don't know what that would do to me. If I was I mean, the only experience I have even close to that is paintball, right? You're going through an urban setting and you
yeah,
don't know, like you have
yeah,
no idea when you're gonna get peppered.
yeah.
But that's one that has casualties and all the horrors that come with it, and the things that you could do to the local population. And so you have that PTSD. Um, I don't know when the casualty rate of home of men and women who have taken their lives at home after the war surpassed, but it's been a while. I don't know what the total figure is now, but we lost about 8,000 people between Iraq and Afghanistan. And it well surpassed that with suicides at home. So of all the people that were killed over there compared to at home for whatever they were dealing with, that number's growing and continues to
Yeah.
be it's higher than what it was overseas.
My impression is that the veterans spike on all sorts of indicators: drug use, divorce, violence, domestic abuse, suicide. I don't know what else. All those things that
Yeah,
veterans have a higher rate. Yeah.
all around trauma.
Yeah. And
It's like growing, yeah,
there's there's an interesting thing about that also of that looking at places where there's been a lot of war, they get to be really uh, I don't know, they get to be traumatized societies like Israel now and the Middle East. Like I look at the genocide in Gaza. It's time to bring Palestinian children out of Gaza. It's time, like Jewish children were taken out of Europe and farmed out in the countryside and all sorts of places. None of that didn't happen as much as it should, but some of that happened. And we're not at a point where that ought to be happening in Gaza. That these kids are just taken out and farmed out to wherever they can be taken. Um, because the genocide is so intensive. It's crazy. But
yeah. There was Gabor Mate, the one of the doctors that speaks out.
I go ahead.
The amount of trauma that every child will have,
Yeah,
99% of them will have.
yeah,
The lives devastated, who still survive. The
yeah,
amount of family members lost, hunger, starvation, death around them,
yeah,
traumatized.
yeah.
Uh, yeah,
I heard him interviewed. Maybe you heard him in that he was interviewed by somebody who's a Palestinian journalist working in Gaza. I think he was. I think, but Gabor Mate, it was amazing to hear his take on what's happening there and that thing on
yeah,
trauma. It
yeah,
you and you see that that it creates people who are dysfunctional. It's like I don't know. It's crazy.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's like Well, every time they do a study on populations and they split between for parties who have certain traumas, it's the traumas that spike. It's no different with any other when you're doing statistics for anything.
Yeah,
What indicators of having this trauma and these things coming about? People who are traumatized tend to traumatize others. It's a
yeah,
generality, but you live in trauma, and I don't know what I mean it does to you. It's
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
But he had been speaking about for a long time because he was also a Holocaust survivor. I think he was an infant
I didn't know
escaping out
that.
of Czechoslovakia. Um, his son is a journalist, Aaron Mate. He's at the Gray Zone with Max Blumenthal.
What's the
Um,
gray zone?
uh, Journalist. It's an
Oh, okay.
outlet. I've been following them. But yeah, every now and then I get to hear Gabor Mate because he would talk with Chris Hedges every now and then, or at
Yeah,
least that I think I remember. Um, but just about generational trauma and what it does to people. Or trauma, and so because he talks, I think raising kids, what it means to be a parent, how to parent. Um,
yeah.
but
And the the parent's job is to not pass it on to the kid, in my
that's
view.
hard because you do, right. It's almost like a as a default, you're gonna do this. You're gonna pass it on.
Yeah,
How and rare like people make rare because you know people who are siblings. You're like, oh, you're not, or they're like, oh, you're not like your parents, but they're the outstanding ones. They're the ones that broke the mold for
yeah,
whatever reason.
yeah.
If they had an aversion to something. Um, so so stepping it up an era too, we had our interventions in Latin. What were you doing in the 80s, 90s, 2000s?
Yeah,
I'm going forward. We're going over decades now.
that's okay. I moved to the mountain. In 1985, I moved to the White Mountains, Franconia, New Hampshire, and
Okay.
it's kind of the boondocks. It's mountain country. It's north of the Notches, et cetera.
Mhm.
And over those years, I've been in local demonstration. Anti-war, like the Gulf War. We had a vigil out in the town of Franconia. I've done other stuff locally over the years. I'm a little at odds with the local organizers of the visibility brigades. You know about those
Yeah.
big up above the highways. Um, I'm in a, a silly struggle with. I don't even know what it's about. It's just and some except I know that some of it is that I'm half nuts, and it's related. I haven't said this here. I'm running for the Senate, which you know, and it's not an idea that other people have. Um, I'm not well equipped to do it. You know, I'm not I'm not U.S. Senate material in any particular way. I'm into this idea of elect an idea. We need to get money out of politics. Nothing can happen as long as our government is bought and paid for by people who have a lot of money.
Yeah.
That it and it's the Democrats. It's a little scary to me about the Democrats now that the Democratic Central they're asleep. They're back on their heels. They're asleep at the wheel. They're not paying attention. They think that they just have to do the same thing harder. Which no, they need to go back to the drawing board desperately. And I'm really keen on, like, say, Mandami in New York. What happened there? I think there's a lot of potential for that kind of thing happening. And I don't know how to put that. Well, I did put it. It's not so much about the socialist piece, though I like that myself. It's about the up and down thing. It's this thing of we're going to do something about the fact that nobody can afford to live anywhere because it's too expensive. Why is it too
Mhm.
expensive? It's because a bunch of rich people have cornered the market and own everything and are sucking the life out of the rest of us. Um,
Yeah.
the squeeze on working people is ridiculous. I can't imagine. Um, I talked to a number. Well, you have you. I don't know what your situation is, but there are lots of young people who, um, have this goal. Oh, I'm going to buy a house, and oh man, I've got the down payment all saved up. I'm ready to start looking. And then they start looking, and it's like, no, they've got like a quarter of the down payment or something like that. They're just out of the market. They can't. It's crazy. It's just
Yeah.
the, yeah. It's
It
sad.
seems, sorry.
It's sad too. It's very sad what's happening in our country now.
Yeah, it seems like things as prices go up, wages aren't really like you have individuals that may make it up the social ladder that have
Yeah.
a higher income that can outcompete inflation, that can have a nice enough living where it seems like they're doing better than their parents were. But for many people, it seems to be worse, or it was never good at all.
Yeah.
And so if you were expecting something nicer, it's out of that's out of touch. It's out of reach. It's like the Simpsons. I was a kid, right? I'm in middle school. I'm watching the Simpsons episode. Homer goes and works at the nuclear plant. Marge is at home. They have one car. I think they go on vacations. He's an average guy at the nuclear plant. They have three kids. They have their vacations. They have what they want. It seems like life's fine. It's like, well, how much money does that guy make today with the no education? All right, works at the nuclear plant, sleeps is falling asleep at his desk all the time, and they go on their vacations and everything's normal. Is he up in the 400,000s? What kind of house does he have?
Yeah.
Although I think their house that was two-story, wasn't it? Now I'm forgetting. But anyway,
I wasn't a fan enough of this Simpsons to know that Homer worked at a nuclear plant.
he was a tech at a nuclear
Yeah.
plant. The
Did they play
low
off?
skill.
Did they play off? Because during that time there were protests about nuclear plants. Like,
This is 80s. Yeah, Mr. Burns was
yeah,
the evil guy, the evil
yeah,
greedy overlord. Um, but yeah, you had, but now the price of homes, the low supply, and if you can't get a home, well, you're going to be renting a lot, high rent rates, low wages. You go to college, you have so much in debt, which now follows you. You can't get out of it with bankruptcy, and the inflation being out of control, which means, or as in the price you pay for foods and basic necessities goes up. It's you feel the pressure, the squeeze, a constant weight of like things are expensive for most people, but some can escape. And if you're in a circle of people that don't feel that or you're doing quite well, then you don't really feel any of this. They're not your
it's
friends.
I'm 79, so I actually I have a couple things about that. I've become recently aware, like over the last 6 months, a year, that I am not uh, as well situated financially as I thought I was. I don't have as much money, and some of that is that my money, my savings, which is fixed. I don't have investments of any kind. My savings are worth less because of inflation, and then I'm paying more because of inflation, et cetera, et cetera. And I just am not uh, as comfortable financially. That's kind of an interesting notion. I don't feel I'm in trouble or in desperation of any kind, but I have to watch myself, what I'm spending or not spending. Um, it's interesting around that, that there are all these people who have endless money. A friend of mine's son works for a car dealer, and they were sort of talking about him getting a promotion and a big pay raise and so on and so forth. He works hard. He does good work. Um, and then, they bring him into the office and say, well, we don't know we, we don't have the money now. We just don't have the money to give you a bunch anymore, to give you a big raise. Uh, so they're telling him this. And what's going on for the owner of the company is the owner has his other financial interest. He's in the midst of buying an airplane, which is just,
Yeah.
it's like, this is what our world is like now. It's,
Yeah.
it's crazy. I had that, Donald Trump. We spent a lot of time talking about this jackass. Um, he the significant thing to know about Donald Trump, and the only thing that's important to know about him, is that he's mentally ill. I keep insisting on this. It's the only thing that matters. He's totally unpredictable. He's a complete liar. He doesn't have his word is worthless. He's et cetera, et cetera. But he's mentally ill. He's not thinking about anything other than, does this make me look good? And like, oh wow, what a hot shit I am because I just got nickel. It's crazy. He's gone crazy, and I wonder. There's this question about narcissism. What happens to the narcissist? If a narcissist in the mental hospital is getting feedback like, "Oh, Jesse, no, you do not look like Robert Redford. I'm sorry, you do not look like him, Jesse. Just get used to you look like Jesse Gillis, and that's all you'll ever look like." But the narcissist who's saying, "Oh yes, you do. You look exactly like Robert Redford, and you look like whatever, your wonderfulness, your great glorious self," because that's what he's getting. He has all these people who are adore him or adulate him, at least to his face. And what does that mean for what's going to happen increasingly? I mean, he's mad. His comment the other day, "I have my own morality and that's all I need." You have to be kidding me. Why isn't this seen as like, oh no, he's gone nuts. He's gone mad. I don't get it. But
Yeah, I don't know if we were in the same call. Oh, we were. We had talked to John Swan up near
yeah,
you.
yeah.
Um, but that law for foreign bribery of U.S. officials was I don't think it was terminated. I don't think it was ended. I gotta look at that. I meant to do that.
Let
Um,
me
it was just it
clarify
was,
something for me. Is that a law that says you cannot bribe foreign officials?
you cannot take bribes from foreign officials.
Oh, you
So
cannot take.
there's the U.S. and in some uh in some capacity that's been reduced or it's not enforceable right now. I don't know if it's a temporary thing until the next administration comes in or it's something that's off the books now, but he can't be held account. And so you have foreign officials which have been giving him these lavish gifts
Yeah.
or and it's insane it's totally okay, but if it's your guy, I guess it's okay because it's your guy. It's a family thing. Like it's your tribe. He's one of us. You take it when you can get it. And it's like, man, that is deep because we all have that. When something works out for one of us, right? Whoever is one of us means. And and I'm saying this from the perspective of the average voter for Trump, who's not connected to the political party, who's not one of the people benefiting from any of this that's going on. Which is like, yeah, if you can get it, oh, if they want to shower him in gifts, yeah. That's, I that's wild. That's
Yeah.
frowned upon. Most
Yeah.
it's frowned upon uh, openly frowned upon. You would call it corruption, right? We call it corruption. We call it bribery.
It is. Yeah.
That's what we call it. But we have laws against it. We have people
You,
stopping. I mean, Dick Cheney had the at least public decency to stop working for Halliburton when he took up vice president. Didn't mean he didn't stop doing the no bid contest for KBR in Iraq, but he had the public thing like I got to step down, so I had to be quiet. So it was like
yeah.
it's so in your face, and it was still odious that Dick Cheney did this, and he was doing this all through the war, and it really makes I don't know the praise I've heard more of late of Dick Cheney now because he considered Harris the candidate for 2024, and people like, oh, see, there's sensible Republicans out there. I was like, do you people? He had the lowest vice president rating I think we've ever had since we were doing polling for vice presidents, and
Yeah.
what he did to get us into Iraq, and that's all forgiven now.
Did, it,
I shouldn't say all forgiven. It's just it didn't leave for at least for the election. It didn't tarnish his name because he voted for the right person or supported the right person publicly.
Let me say a couple things here in this that seem to fit
Yeah,
together. There's what you're saying about Cheney and who he was not. Then you take his daughter. His daughter. And looking at her, she came out against Trump early, and you know,
Mhm.
the 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 Democratic, the sort of the bright whites among the Democrats were, oh wow, this is great, this is great, and we have this Republican stalwart who's on our side now. This is really good news, and there's something to that, and there was something about her being courageous enough to speak out,
Mhm.
et cetera, et cetera. I'm not, but on the other hand, what it offered to the Trumpies was the notion that, do you see? This is what we've been saying. They're all the same.
Yeah.
You know, Joe Biden and Liz Cheney, they're in the same deal. They're the same. I said this the other day to you about that. I think that notice Bill and Hillary went to Don and Melania's wedding. It's like they're in the same social circle, the same country club, the same everything. Yeah, they're disagreements, but they're agreements. and the problem is the agreements. What's happening in Washington D.C. is a bunch of stuff, some of which makes sense, but the only thing that you can be guaranteed to happen is that Wall Street will do fine,
Yeah.
and that's what's happened. That's what D.C. is about. That's all they're accomplishing, and the rest of it is to leave us. Well, the socialist analysis is that the rich people do whatever they can to divide the underclasses. And you look at our country, how more effectively could somebody be in dividing people in our country? The people who voted for Donald Trump, some, some of them, many of them, have had good reasons to be angry, good reasons to be. It's hard to say that they had good reasons to vote for Trump because voting for him was dumb as all get out. It was but that's what angry people do. Angry people do stupid things, and they did. They did, and they were so mad. Yeah, it's astonishing to me that the Democrats don't recognize the fact that they have lost twice to somebody who's an absolute moron. How could you? It's like being the New England Patriots and losing to the local high school team. It's like, how did that happen? This team is senseless. Well, the way it happened was uh, started with Bill Clinton, who sent the working class to China and elsewhere, promising that, oh, nobody's going to lose their jobs. It's all crazy. But Wall
Yeah.
Street did fine. The people on Wall Street made out like bandits. They went and they took jobs to China. They made much more money out of their product, et cetera, et cetera. And it's just,
That was, yeah. That was the free trade. That's the globalization. I mean, it's cheaper. There's cheap labor pools elsewhere where they don't have benefits. They don't have
yeah,
environmental laws.
yeah,
They're not going to put up a fight. You can pay them dirt, especially if it's in a corrupt country where you could
yeah.
bribe foreign officials and businesses over there in those practices. You can cut
And
a lot of corners and save money and make big. And then your competitors, right? We'll stick with a shoe factory. Your competitor goes overseas and starts producing shoes at roughly the same quality, and they are undercutting you by a percentage where you're losing now. You have to go do the same
yeah,
thing. You can't
yeah,
keep up unless there's a brand loyalty, and that works for some people. But uh, for personally, my father was in the bicycle retail business, a small bicycle shop, right? This isn't tied overseas. Overseas production, yeah. The same Giant or Excel North America makes the same frame. They just slap a different sticker on it. So it's the same tubing for the frame. It's just the different brands they all come from the same factories. It didn't matter. You're always buying the head owners are still winning. You're just buying the flavor of ice cream.
yeah,
Um, but when the box stores started selling bikes, he couldn't compete anymore. It used to the manufacturer like Raleigh used to sell directly to small bike shops, but then they wanted to make larger sales. No small bike shops go sell it because we could sell it for a cheaper price because we don't have to pay for the skills a small bicycle shop operator has.
yeah.
And so over time, he starts losing out on customers to box stores, Target, Walmart, Dick's
Yeah.
Sporting Goods, Kmart. When that was there, when it was destroyed by Walmart, but
It, it takes a long time to come into full consciousness of what's happening to yourself and the world and myself.
yeah,
I can remember a conversation that's at least 25 years ago, probably more. I was in a hardware store, a local hardware store, and a salesman comes in and he's trying to sell the guy this new, I don't know, palm sander drill with all the gizmos, or I don't know, no, it was a stapler. And actually, I remember the feature of it. A stapler, the old kind of stapler, you have to push down on the back of it to just make the staple shoot. And this new stapler had a thing where you push down on the front to make the staple shoot, which is much better because both you're pushing where you want the
yeah,
staple to go, as opposed to pulling it out. You'd have to play with
yeah,
the tool, but you get it. So he's selling this tool, and the guy, the hardware store guy, is saying, "Oh yeah, it's a no-brainer. Of course, that's the way to make a stapler. Unbelievable. What a great design. Blah blah blah." And the guy says, "Okay, so I'm gonna sell you a bunch." And he says, and the hardware store guy says to him, "Why do I want to buy a bunch of your staplers? I'm gonna put them on sale here, and I'll have to put them on at 19.99, and you're gonna go sell them down at the box store where they're gonna put them on for 9.99. And I, why do I won't be able to sell them?" And this
yeah.
was so long ago, and here we are again. It's like, oh, this is actually no, this is what's happening. This is what has already happened. Um, I remember that from Bill Clinton's campaign speech. His stump speech was that notion: nobody's going to lose their job. And it's like, wait a second, you're going to build a factory that employs people somewhere else, and nobody loses their job. It just, I don't know. We live with these lies, and it takes us a long time.
There is opportunity after opportunity to help out. And maybe that's something to now I don't have an econ background, so I can't speak tariffs. I think there's some idea that's what tariffs are meant to do to help out American manufacturing. Um, but they've had opportunity time after time to help out per the moving around the labor pools. I mean, but it's not in their interests. So you have when you talked about McCarthy and whether they said socialism or communism, and that's the enemy of capitalism and us, they they point to the government like Reagan, right? The government's not your friend, right? The government's not your friend, but if the corporations, the head of corporations, are the ones that fund the campaigns and control the political apparatus of the government, then I don't understand where's the distinction that people want to make of like the government's not your friend. Yeah, they're not your friend, but it's the corporations that also aren't your friends, and they control the government. They have such a heavy hand in what goes on to help them out in the government.
I had, I don't know if I said that to you. Again, uh, blowing my own whistle or whatever you call it. I ran for president in the New Hampshire primary. It was a weird experience. It was kind of fun. It was quixotic. It was just it was interesting talking to people because I'd go anywhere and talk, and all I was talking about is money out of politics. I was saying that I'm not the guy. All I'm doing is trying to get money out of politics. You know what it is, dark money out of politics. And usually before I started to rant, about half the time, the other person would start to rant first, whether they were Republican or Democrat. We all know that about this corruption. The problem is that all the downscale Democrats think, oh, it's those Republican oligarchs, and all the Republican downscale type think, oh, it's those Democratic oligarchs. That we've got to find that common ground, and it already there. It is already there that we have this large agreement about dark money in politics. That's what we want. We want to get it out. That's what I'm about. And most people that I talk to want that, except most people also believe that it can't be got out. that that's just the way things are. You know, it's like sometimes it rains, money goes into politics in this way or something. People do not believe that we can accomplish that goal, and I, I'm not sure they're wrong,
Yeah.
but
Well, what it take it's much harder because we have to unify behind a message. And I say we, but it's like, well, who am I counting in the we? Because some people want their party to win. That identity, identifying with them, right? They're wearing the sports jacket. They have the jersey on of their team. And maybe they're in a position that like, no, I want this to win and it doesn't matter. I think anything else will harm me. Or maybe it will harm them because they have a position where
yeah,
in there how they put food on the table. And if everything's fine, they're not going to look for some other like you're saying, throw this garbage out. I can't, we're not doing this. This doesn't work for any of us. And you're right, but it works for some people. And there are some people that are fine with how it's going. Or fine enough that it's not going to stop them from already voting for who's on the primary ticket for each party. Or even to go for a alternative candidate for each party. Or to vote for a third. Like, did you run it as an independent or did you run as a Democrat?
Democrat.
So they would be saying, well, you're going up against the DNC. Well, at the time it was Harris, right? So you're a write-in, right? Or were you on?
I,
Who's
I
that for
was
the
just in the primary, and I was on the ballot. It's very easy in New Hampshire to get on the ballot. It costs $1,000. That's it. No signatures, petitions, anything else. Nothing.
Yeah,
It's less to do the Senate. So that's all I did. I just signed up, and I was on the Democratic primary ballot.
I think did I see a photo of you and Tom Steyer?
Maybe.
Okay,
I
I,
don't
th- I
know.
thought I saw something for your run. Yeah,
I don't know. There were, like the New Hampshire primary ballot in the presidential years has all the people that you know, Joe Biden, Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, or whoever's are those people who are running in the primary. They're like that year they were, I don't know, 4 or 5, and then there was just suddenly there was only Biden. Um, but then beyond that, there are like another 8, 10, 12, 15 people who are running for president, and they're
yeah,
all like I was. They're just nobodies. They just come out of the woodwork. Have you ever heard of Vermin Supreme?
yeah, yeah,
He,
yeah. I see
he's
what
smart.
he's doing.
He does it too, and he's like he makes a joke out of it. He was funny as hell. I loved him. It's very funny. Um, but we're
No,
known as the lesser known candidates, and it's just
yeah,
because we got on the ballot and da da da. You know, I don't know. It's an interesting.
yeah, one of the things about it, like why you're not even thought of as an idea for being voted for. It's like if you and I were vying for votes in a town, say your town, and every property had a vote, and it's just you and I, we could control that. There's a 50-50 odd, just flip of the coin right off the bat. And we could start strategizing how to gain votes for whatever to keep our position. But now introduce somebody new, we'd rather not have that even on a flip like a three-sided thing, right? A die of three sides. Why would we want a third person? That now lowers our chances and it intermixes things, makes things more complicated for us to keep our position. We had 50% last time, whatever that gave us, but now voting for somebody else is going to mix things up. And so anytime a viable candidate were to come up as an alternative, right, even if it was in party or out of party, I don't see why both Republicans and Democrats, as they do, are like, we're not going to allow that. We're going to each take steps to make sure that this doesn't work. There is no other way. It's through us. And we'd rather be us together than we'd rather have our enemies across the aisle than have something else come up as a viable solution.
That's
That
what's
mixes
happening.
things up. And so it's like, oh geez. I mean, they may be disagree, they might be enemies, but they're enemies to a degree until something else comes up that might threaten their grasp.
You know, Jesse, some of this is really horrible and pathetic and horribly sad and really blah blah blah. But you look at examples. Take the Affordable Care Act. Here was the signature act of the Obama administration. It was this huge good thing to be done to cover more people on health issues. a really good thing, a solid accomplishment, et cetera, et cetera. Except for one thing. The way it got, what the only way to get it through the Congress was to give it to the insurance industry to run it and make money off it. That's what's happened. That's what happened with it. And as a result, we have really expensive insurance that many people can't afford, and we have shitty health care relative to most developed countries.
Yeah.
And the reason it happened was there's this class of people who say, okay, oh yeah, let's do this. Let's do this. You just take it, put it all in my hands. I'll run it. I'll keep everything in good order. I'll make sure things get paid and, blah, 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 blah. I'm going to take care of it. And they do. And they make a shitload of money out of it. It's the same with everything that's done. Look at the notion of like oil leases, say. These leases, just by the fact, these leases were, what do you call it, a sweetheart deal. Because they were sweetheart deals because people made billions and billions and billions of dollars out of the deal. So by definition, it's a sweetheart deal. So the people who have these sweetheart deals, when the rest of us finally get enough clout to say, no, you have to leave it in the ground, those people are going to be up there saying, you have to pay us for what we're not taking out of the ground. I'm like, wait a second, you've made billions out of this. You've made billions and billions and billions. And now we have to pay you for not taking it out of the ground? It's just crazy. This is not right. There's a piece of this around the wealth distribution. That is not people's money. You talk about whoever you want to, any of those multi-billionaires. It's not their money. And we need to say that. It's not, I get it that the law says it is. I get that. That's the problem. The law is fucked up. They didn't earn it. It's not, they didn't do something that's worth that much. It just isn't. It's crazy. It's insane. And we have got to walk things back from that point. It's already, is it, a lot of times when I talk about, like, part of my campaign speech where I've only given a couple, has been, there are two truths about American politics. The first truth about American politics is that you can't get money out. The second truth is that if we do not get dark money out of politics, we're fucked. And then I go on to apologize about my diction. I'm sorry, but if you have another word that kind of expresses it, give it to me. But so many of us are stuck on the first thing. We don't believe this can happen. And we also don't believe that it must, but it must. There are a lot of people, you talk about, people are out here talking about fascism. Are we drifting into fascism? And guys, they're pointing at a bunch of things, and there are more and more things to point to. That's pretty bad. That's probably worse than being fucked, is to go and be fascist. It's crazy that we're talking about fascism. We need to rise up. We the people. You said something earlier about that brought to my mind that there is no we the people in this country. There's no we. We are divided. There's us and them. It's totally antagonistic. And this is arranged by the people running our politics. This is what it's all about, is to create those divisions where, yeah. And I don't know, again, the common ground is around money in politics. Because I have there's a feed store up in Littleton. Interesting guy runs it. I've spoken to several people about the store and said, do you go to the Who's What's It store? And everybody but one person, I probably mentioned this because I'm talking about my conversations with this guy, and I'm talking about other people I probably mentioned it to like 15, 20 people. Every single person, except for one guy, every single person says, oh yeah, I know who you're talking about. I don't go there anymore because he's obnoxious. He's a Trumpy, and he practically attacks you if you come in to talk about, this is, like sort of like what I'm talking about from the other side of things, except that his story, much of what he says is talking about rich people getting control of everything, or a lot, more
Yeah.
control than they should. So that's common ground. It's just the thing of, are we gonna get together and do it, or are we gonna do Tweedledee or Tweedledum or something like that? But
It's like what was Martin Luther's campaign, the Poor People's Campaign?
yeah,
I'm serving the people. Like you say you're running and you're gonna do something for the people. You save the people, but it's like, no, you're leaving out. There's certain people that do not want you or want what you have, or you actually harm their, I say harm, but you limit their financial capabilities, or you restrict the amount of growth that they have. So when you're running, as you say you're running, there's what, the top 5%, 10%, and the ones that do the bidding that would not like your campaign or want you to run for office,
yeah,
right? That put everything they have into stopping you if they saw that you was a threat to their holdings. So like in New Hampshire, there's a population who would just be against that. Like, get them out. Nope, not even consider. It's like you wouldn't be serving them, but it's like, man, do you take care of all your fans? Is all your family all set? Is it, you think this is okay? In the long term, it's you would be, because you're talking about like destabilizing the society. Like this is destabilizing. There's growing unrest because of around the economic stuff. I mean,
yeah,
we see that in Iran right now, right? The protests, police are being killed, protesters are being killed, and
yeah,
it was going up with the inflation around their currency, and we're to the point that people are out protesting and willing to do that, even with the repercussions of the police coming after them and abducting them and killing them, and it's all around the money, and it's like if you and so you take that here as things continue to grow in unrest, how destabilized is like what do people want holding on to clutching. I was going to say pearl clutching. I don't think that's the right thing for this, but you don't want to give up anything. In doing that, you'll sacrifice the society that you live in, because you're owed yours, whatever it is, however much it is, extraordinary amount of money.
yeah,
And so you'd rather see the downfall than to give up any of it, because they're not you. They're not. You don't see them as we. When you have that we, the poor people, the people that are homeless or jobless or make a low amount of money, they're not valued in the select that you are, right? Because you went to wherever. I say that not you, but the person who has such an extravagant amount of money, who has lavish vacations and knows really rich people and goes on cruises, or not cruises, but private planes, and has their own boats
yeah.
and high networking. But I don't think most of us are seen as people.
We're at a rough spot. I just, it's, I don't, I say this, I do not think our current leadership is capable of pulling us out of this. There are some bright stars, but even some of the bright stars are pretty flawed, and I don't know that they can do the job. It really is going to require us. Excuse me, I don't mean to identify you this, but us nobodies, just us
Yeah.
nobodies, getting up
Oh,
and
you're
saying,
good.
"This is what to do," and it's a question of how to organize that. My whole thing is, I said that earlier. I am half nuts, and doing what I'm doing is making me half nuts. I can't tell you how uh, unglued I am often. Um, the problem in it is I know that I'm right, and it's not me that's right. It's you that's right. It's everybody else that's right, because everybody thinks get dark money out, we'll be way better off. So many people think that. You know, the Maine, the last election cycle, Maine had a referendum about uh, money in politics. I have
Yeah,
to
the
look.
super PACs.
Yeah, but and it was sort of like nobody can spend more than so much money in one campaign from out of state, or I don't know what it was, but it was something like that. There are any number of things that it could have done, but it passed by like 70%. How many other things pass by 70% in our country? Nothing. Nothing does. You know, and that's what I'm saying. It's this huge piece of common ground, and the problem is this: the we the people that doesn't exist, the us and them that does exist, has to become a we the people and meet on that common ground. We have got to accomplish that one thing. I just, it's like a no brainer in my view, and as a consequence, I'm half nuts. Really, I'm just, and I think some people who know me would agree, that uh, it's just half nuts to think. But I do think that it's sort of like I don't know how you would vote. You're going to vote in the New Hampshire primary, and
Yeah.
my I'm not. I don't care how you. I do care how you vote, but my guess is you'd vote for Karishma. I like Karishma. She's got a lot going for her, and um, she would be good relative to the rest of that crowd in DC. But I don't think she can get it done because the whole game is so weighted against getting anything done. It's the
Yeah.
way it's played. She'll have to go down there and play games with people. Okay, I'll give you that if you give me this, and it's the way to get things done. And I like this. I like some of those people who are doing that. Bernie. One of the biggest problems in our country is that we're not just an oligarchy, but that we're a gerontocracy. Old people run by old people, and here I am, almost 80, running another old person running, and you can sit and make this case against the gerontocrats. All these old people, get out of there. What it took so long for what's her name to leave, and it was ridiculous. There's an exception to this rule, and the exception to that rule is Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders has more energy than somebody about a third of his age, and he's out there constantly making the point. I love Bernie Sanders, but there aren't other leaders. There are people they talk about. I don't know. Is Gavin Newsom promising, or is J.B. Spritzker? The names that I hear. Those are names I hear. And then
Yeah.
who else do I hear? I can't remember. But they're not going to do it. They are not going to do it. It just can't happen. This idea that I'm talking about, it does have the potential to catch fire. That, oh, you're doing that too? Oh, you're going to do that? Really? You're really going to vote for that guy?
Yeah.
And oh yeah, I am. I really am. I'm going to vote because it's not about him. He's going to go down there and do this one thing. That's all he's going to do. It has the potential to catch fire.
It's odd. It came to me. It's like I'm growing more naive as I as I get into this. Like I don't know, maybe I shouldn't say it like that, but it's like, oh man, when I think I thought I have an idea of what's going on, our framework for how something's running. It's like, no, that's damn, I'm growing out of touch. And it's like you say you're going half nuts focusing on this thing. It's like well, how many distractions or illusions around us for ways forward, a path forward out of this? You
Yeah.
have to, you get out of this. It's nonsense. This is really binding up your time. And uh I forgot where I heard it, but the idea they were expressing the idea that your politics is private and personal, but we're doing a public thing with it, right? So your politics is you, and you vote for whoever you think is the right person. You make your own choice, you alone, right? Nobody can tell you, but you're going to go and vote for someone for the political stage, right? For the politics, for how your society is going to be governed from the administrative level, the town, the state, and the federal level. That's totally public sphere, but you're going to do a private decision, right? It's that distinction of that it's that whoever I vote for, I'm hoping that I'm voting with a large enough block that we could at least agree upon something as to avoid something, and we're going towards something better. But if it's just me voting for who I think is personally, I like that's almost when we talk about agreement on a policy, right? Vote, you're talking about vote an idea. I can like your idea and I can vote for you, but so long as I'm keeping it to myself and I'm not doing anything else other than really maybe passerby I talk to, that's gonna go nowhere. And I'm hoping that my vote goes with a larger block of us that say we want this because we don't want these other things, but
Uh,
because they got a real grasp of this, they I
something
think
that,
Pappas is still sorry, go on.
no, go ahead.
I think Pappas, I don't know what the latest polling is, but he still has a commanding lead in the primary.
You know,
And no
here,
doubt most people will vote for him in the general election just to not split it up or
I, there are things that I say because I have a little forum. Somebody's going to hear me say this. I don't know who. Maybe it's one person. Here, let me say something about Chris Pappas. Everything I know about him, there's this quality of decency or blah blah blah. You know, he's not a bad guy, and but I will not vote for him in the general election. Repeat, to the Democratic Party, to uh, um, the whole established Democratic Party. I will not vote for Chris Pappas unless he thoroughly repudiates his connection to AIPAC and his support for the Gaza genocide. I will not vote for him. I don't care if he's preferable to the Republican candidate. I will not vote for genocide. And he has got to come out and stop doing this. This is disgusting that he's supporting this. It's madness. I don't care about defining what he's doing. I want to announce I will not vote for him. I will not vote for anybody else who's supportive of the Gaza genocide. And here you are, the progressive people in the Democratic Party. We need to step up and sort of, you need us. You can't win without us. We can't without you. We have got to find common ground. And what is that common ground? A piece of it is to move things downscale. We're going to work for regular Mandami. We're going to work for regular type people who hold jobs, people who have kids, who suffer, who deal with all sorts of life, who are getting inflated and squeezed by that, et cetera, et cetera. We've got to move everything in that direction. Or you're going to lose votes. You can't get the numbers. There was, I referred to, who Fareed Zakaria is?
heard the name.
He's a journalist. He wrote an article talking about how the Democratic Party can win, i.e., they can make a coalition or whatever. They can collect the numbers, the majority, without including the working class. Two things about that. One, I would bet he's way wrong. One of the problems that we're having is that we've lost the working class, or we've lost far too many of the working class. And the other thing about Zakaria's idea, his premise, is if the Democratic Party wants to be a party that does not include include the working class, I don't want to be in that party. I do not want to be in a party that doesn't want the working class. And there are a lot of Democrats who are thinking this way. And one of the problems with the Democratic constituencies is, they're relatively small constituencies who have legitimate complaints about the world that they live in and how that they're oppressed people, et cetera, et cetera. But it's too close to numbers. You look at it. The Democrats losing to Donald Trump twice, John Kerry loses to George Bush, and you take the people who run these campaigns, they sort of cycle through the same crowd of people. But you look at that, the Kerry Bush campaign, the John Kerry, on the issue of his military service, just on that, against George Bush, he lost ground on that issue against George Bush. And this is the way things got framed during that election. You know, George Bush he wasn't quite a draft dodger, but he was about as close as you can get. He signed up for the reserves or the National Guard or something. He just stayed stateside, and he didn't really even have to go. So he's not on the front line. John Kerry goes to Vietnam and he gets shot 3 times or something. He's got 3 Purple Hearts, I think it was. I don't remember totally. And, you know, they quibble, oh, well, one of them was just some Mick or, you know, I don't know what. But he was in Vietnam. He got shot, you know, and he loses, you know, on that part of the campaign of comparing military service. He lost ground on that issue. And how does a campaign run and lose like that? You know, how, why couldn't they, you know, I don't know. They do the same thing repeatedly. They're contemptuous. They're contemptuous of working people. They're contemptuous of low-class people. The people who run the Democratic Party, not all of them, many of them are contemptuous of
There
those.
was a there was a video of George Bush going back into a grocery store because he hadn't been in so long, and he was amazed at it was a digital cash register. Wow, look at that. When was the last time you've been in a grocery store
Yeah,
in the
yeah,
2000s?
yeah, yeah.
You're not, I don't understand. You're wearing the jersey of your favorite political team, and they'll take your vote and your money, whatever you give, and they'll take whatever praise, but you are nothing to them. You express any concern or show any non-loyalty, and you're out. You're gone. These people toss you out. You're not one of them.
It,
And that's for most of the people we talk to, right?
well, as to the Democratic Party is welcome to say to me, John, you are no longer welcome in our midst, and I will walk away. I'm, you know, that's what we need to do in the progressive left. We need to go into the Democrats and say, we're not going to vote for this shit anymore. You're not going to put up some old man who, well, you know, the, the, the Biden nomination was going to be ridiculous, you know, and it became clear to everybody. There are a lot of people who knew this ahead of time. I did. I was like, I have a bunch of college friends who were Zooming all through COVID, and since they're still. I'm not part of it anymore because I'm a little at odds. But months before Biden announced, we met, and every single person is saying Biden should not run. He's too old, et cetera, and other things. They also said one of the problems with Biden running again is that Kamala Harris will still be his vice president, and she doesn't have the chops to do the job. There was this consensus on those 2 points in this discussion that this should not happen. He shouldn't announce. He announced, and that very night in one of these discussions, one of the people says, I've got my check in the mail to the Biden campaign. You know, this isn't democratic. You know, it's this handful of people in Washington, D.C. say, yeah, Joe, I think you should run again. I think, you know, it doesn't matter. Not only, it doesn't matter that you're whatever you are now, 80 or something. And actually, it doesn't matter that in private, I don't know if this is actually true, but I would bet my life it is, that in private, Joe, the fact that you're drooling or your mind is getting a little drifty here, that we're going to still let you run. You know, it just, you know, here you are getting into the Super Bowl, and you're going to have a quarterback who's who's got a busted leg. You got to be kidding me. Anybody else would have stood a better chance.
Yeah.
And the Democrats don't have faith in a democratic process, running a bunch of candidates, having a discussion, and picking one of them. I disrespect a lot of the people who dropped out, and it's hard to say it because I respect and admire some of these people, but they should have run. They should have run, and I don't understand. I mean, some of that's the problem. How did that decision get made? It's amazing. It's incredible to me that it got made. Joe Biden, as much as delivered us into the hands of Donald Trump. You couldn't have picked a worse campaign, a worse candidate. The whole thing. It was like a circus. What do we, this is crazy. Well,
Yeah.
I'm not going to do it again. I'm not. It's like you're the team captain, and I'm on the team, and you're out there doing dumb things. I'm going to eventually say to you, I'm not coming out on the field with you. I'm just not. It's not worth the bother. You're losing. You keep losing. But I mean, look at all the elections that we've been. Gore, Bush, of course, the Supreme Court. We've lost elections to people who aren't that swift, and it's frightening. I'm ranting.
You're fine. You're fine. There's a
I
lot
guess.
more to be said, but we are, for an episode of getting to know you on here, this could be a long one for people to tune into. But it will be there for the archives. People want to see it.
Yes,
The Hampshire Veterans for Peace.
uh,
What's on
I
our mind
wonder,
in
one always wonders. Well, I don't wonder, but now I do because I'm doing this thing of what have I said here that will get thrown back into my face and hurt badly. I don't know, but we'll see.
We'll find out.
Yeah, we'll find out. We'll find out.
No,
We'll,
thank you, John. This has been great.
yeah, thank you, Jesse. Talk to you sometime. I don't know, anytime.
I'll follow up with an email. But I'll send you the link of this when I put it up.
Which
It'll
link?
be on. I'll send a link of this when I put it up on YouTube,
Okay,
so you
cool.
can look at it for the campaign stuff.
I have to say something just in conclusion because you spoke about putting it up for Facebook. At some point, and I don't know when, but maybe now, we have got to stop spending our money in such a way that it goes to these people. Facebook, Zuckerberg is a third-rate character. You can tell he's got values, and then Trump's there, and those values. Oh, you don't really have those values. He's jumped
Like
into
they
bed
don't.
with Donald Trump. The
It's like
whole
they
line.
never did.
What?
It's like they never did, or it only
Yeah,
goes so far. I'm such and such until this happens,
yeah.
until this condition.
There are a lot of things that get put up. You're getting all this stuff from online stuff, and they're videos that are on X, and I don't watch. I'm not going to watch them, because they're on X. I don't want to see it. I don't want anything to do with that.
Well,
Puts me out.
this will be on YouTube. I don't run the Facebook page,
Yeah, we
but
it's hard to be clean altogether.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, John.
All right, Jesse. Take care.
Take care.